welcome to the Brickyard Series. I'm your host, Andrea Thompson, and today it is my pleasure to be talking to my buddy, Dave Silverberg. Hi,
Hi,
Dave.
Andrea. Thanks for inviting me. It's so good to see you.
It's so
It's like
good
it's
to
been
see.
ages.
I know. We were saying this before we got on here, how, like pandemic times and stuff like that, eh? It's like disconnected
Yeah.
people. So it's nice to kind of have this moment to get to connect again.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's good to learn about what new things you're getting up to in the new year and to share with you what I've been up to. And yeah, it's also an honor to be here, for Brickyard Books and Brick Books. So yeah, thank you to your entire team there.
Well, thank you. It's so I'm really excited to have you here because this is part of our series that we've been doing with the Toronto Poetry Slam, and we've been interviewing members of the TPS Collective, and Toronto Poetry Project is the producer of the Toronto Poetry Slam. And even though you are no longer in the collective, as you have gone on to do other fabulous things that we're going to tell everybody about, you are the founder. So I thought, who better to talk to about slam and slam in Toronto and the Toronto Poetry Slam than you? So I would like to introduce you properly and let everybody know, a little bit about your background. So I'm going to read your bio here. Dave Silverberg is a spoken word poet, journalist, editor, event producer, and former artistic director of Toronto Poetry Slam. He has performed his poetry across Canada, as well as in New York, London, UK, and Paris. His most recent poetry collection is As Close to the Edge Without Going Over by ChiZine. Is it ChiZine Press?
ChiZine, yeah.
ChiZine? Yeah, okay. In 2018, he wrote and performed his solo show, his first solo show, Jewnique, which explores his relationship to Judaism, and he is currently working on a second solo show that will debut in 2023. He recently launched a coaching program to help freelance journalists, business writers, and creative writers level up their skills. So, hello again, David.
Hello, it's so good to be here, and yeah, hearing my bio, it does always feel weird to hear your own bio sometimes.
Well, you're a fancy guy. You're doing a lot of cool things, and you have done a lot of cool things. So
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
known you. Let's just jump in. So I've known you for a really long time,
Yeah.
and when I first met you, you actually, let's backtrack a little bit. That would be my second question. First off, I would love to hear, because not everybody, we assume everybody, we're talking about this, how people like there's people in our community and there's people outside the community who maybe don't know even what a slam is. So did you
Mhm.
want to start us off with a kind of provisional
Sure.
definition? What is slam?
Happy to give a primer to folks. So, Slam is a competitive poetry tournament that involves poets taking the stage, performing their poems, whether they memorize them or either off paper. It's not a battle, by the way, so don't think 8 Mile and Eminem. They perform their favorite poems, new poems, old poems, and then the host earlier on in the evening picks 5 judges from the audience to be judges. They give them a scorecard between 0 to 10, to one decimal place. So 5.5, 8.2, 9.9, 10 being a perfect score. And they're told to judge the poem based on both content and performance of what the poet is performing on stage. So it's very much a high energy, exciting, and thrilling way to bring poetry and spoken word to people who may have loved poetry all their lives or who may have never ever heard a poem on stage before and are curious what this whole poetry slam thing is. And so, yeah, slam has been around for many decades. Of course, spoken word itself has been around as an art form for centuries. With roots in indigenous communities, in marginalized communities, and slam was a way for it to kind of spread across the US. And then slam itself also, its tendrils reached Canada, Europe, and Australia, the Middle East, and really around the world. So if you name a city in the world, or relatively large or medium-sized city, most likely there is or there was a poetry slam there.
So now that brings us to you. you know, when I first met you, it was, I don't even know what the date was. It was a long time ago. And
Mhm.
you were running a series called Suburban Spoken Word in
Right.
the outskirts of northern suburbs of Toronto.
Mhm.
And you know, I had been involved with the slam scene in Vancouver, but there, you know, you were the one who really brought slam into. I think there were some slams happening, but like a real kind of regular, really vibrant slam um, to the downtown area in Toronto. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that. Like, what sparked that idea? Why did you take it on?
Sure.
What was that like? What was the scene like before you did that?
Well, Suburban Spoken Word, as you mentioned, was a series I did when I was 18 up in kind of North York, Richmond Hill.
You were
Uh,
18?
I was 18. I was
Wow.
18, yeah, when I started it. And I just wanted to get a poetry event going in an area that I was living in with my parents that felt like an artistic desert. I felt like there was really nothing going on in the burbs. So, why wait for someone else to do it? Why not just do it yourself? And so it was almost like a selfish reason why I wanted to start Suburban Spoken Word, because I myself just wanted to hear some of my favorite poets, fiction writers, and sometimes even musicians and rappers take the stage at a pub slash bridge club around the Steeles and Bathurst area. So after I did that for 4 years, I got invited to the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word, the first edition in around 2004, I believe, to bring a team there. Just called through some great poets that I met through the suburban spoken word scene, like Amanda Hebert and Leviathan and Mike Smith. We all kind of went to Ottawa for the first time, as did so many other spoken word poets, all convening together for a big national tournament. And then they, with my team, I met and really got to know Dwayne Morgan, who's really the godfather of the spoken word scene in the GTA, who was running slams and running regular events at the Big Bop, which unfortunately is closed in the Queen and Bathurst area. And him and I got talking about slam that he was regularly doing, but Toronto was such a big city, we needed another team to represent a really impressively talented metro area. And I was around that time, I think, moving downtown, and thought, my suburban spoken word days were kind of done, as I felt like I did what I wanted to do in the burbs and to bring artistic inspiration there. But thanks to all my work at Suburban Spoken Word, I got to know a lot of fantastic spoken word poets and organizers, folks like Matt Toth and Rahul Gupta, and aforementioned Amanda Hebert and Crystal Mullen and Truth Is, and eventually started Toronto Poetry Slam in 2005, because they needed one more Toronto Poetry Slam team, Toronto team to have a slam team that would represent at the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word. Vancouver had two teams, Ottawa had two teams, so why not Toronto? And it was something I was fascinated by when I first saw it, that Dwayne Morgan ran, when I also saw it at the Festival of Spoken Word, with that energy and that immediacy and that urgency that came with performing poetry on stage. It really was invigorating to see it, much as like I saw spoken word poetry really be inspiring for me on the suburban spoken word stage. But with slam, the audience is involved more. The audience is encouraged to clap and to voice what they think about a poem, and even voice if they find a poem distasteful or racist or sexist. And I really like that immediate feedback that the crowd could give you. That was different than the poetry readings I was doing at Suburban Spoken Word, which were kind of straight edge in the way they were presented. So slam, I think, really made me realize that this was an art form that spoke to me and that spoke to so many other audiences. And that's why I decided to start it in a small pub in the College and Spadina area that has since now become, I think, a VR gaming store or VR gaming shop. And since then, we bounced around from venue to venue and eventually settled on at the Drake Hotel in around 2009, where TPS kind of lived there for a very long time, and then the pandemic kind of upended things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's had quite a history, and the series has just produced so many amazing artists. I was thinking about that, the trajectory of artists, spoken word artists who start in slam. It's like this incubator,
Yeah.
almost
Okay.
environment, and then go on to do other things. I'm one of the people. Ian Keteku was one of our mentors in the Brickyard
Shane
program.
Cloyson, Mike McGee, yeah, so many folks.
Sabrina Benaim, we
Yeah.
just interviewed her as well, and so I was wondering, and even you as the organizer have gone on beyond the slam venue, and
Mhm.
moved on to a larger format. It's like without the constraints of the 3 minutes, everybody kind of tried, not everybody, but a lot of people tried the expansion. What can I do
Yeah.
with a longer format? So why do you think that is? Like, what is it about slams and the slam community that makes them such like a poetic nursery for spoken word artists?
Yeah, I've thought about that before, and I think it's a couple things. One is that you definitely get to be a stronger writer when you write for a 3 minute stopwatch. You might think that's a little erroneous because, writing for a time limit, that's like, nothing that you're taught at school or nothing that writing instructors would ever tell you about, but you become a really good editor. Much like writing haikus makes you a very strong editor of fine-tuning your message and your theme and your wordplay to those syllable counts. Same thing with spoken word. If you're able to, move people in some way, whether to tears or to insight or to understanding your truths and your beliefs in that small amount of time, it really gives you a sense of confidence. It can motivate you to think about what else you can do with an expanded time limit and with maybe no time limit at all. And secondly, I think the community of slam is very energizing and I think can make people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves than what maybe a solitary writer might feel in their room writing alone with maybe no other folks other than people online to kind of give them feedback. But because the community is so strong and so tight and really so supportive and really not cutthroat like other competitive formats might, give birth to, I think that can help inspire a lot of artists. Because, for instance, I saw a lot of folks do solo shows once a few other poets started to do solo shows, including yourself, including Dwayne Morgan, and including Brendan McLeod, who started to do solo shows soon after getting into slam and spoken word. So I think when we can see our peers succeed and excel and impress at another format while still being strong writers and very talented performers, that I think can be what you said about incubating that sense of excellence, and then leading to that inspiration to go into another kind of medium.
Yeah, which you have done. I was just thinking about it, like from the very small to the much larger performances. One of your wheelhouses as a poet was the haiku, the form of the haiku,
Right.
and you won the death match, one of
I
the
did haiku death match, yeah.
haiku death match. Yeah, that was your specialty. And now you're doing one-man shows and more kind of theater centered work. Can
Yeah,
you tell me a little bit about that trajectory for you as an
for
artist?
sure. I think when I thought about what I wanted to do next in my writing career or creative writing career, beyond my work as a journalist and brand content marketer, I thought, 3 minutes is constraining after a few years. And my friend Mike McGee has a line where he says, or a kind of a mantra where he says, every slam poet should be in slam for 3 years and then move on. It's
Mm,
very easy to get kind of stuck there or kind of
mm.
sucked in to slam because it is seductive to get those scores of 9 and 10 and to win tournaments and to win national festivals. But for me, I really wanted to expand my repertoire of what I could write about. And for instance, to write about my relationship to Judaism, my up and down kind of relationship with it, I wanted to not limit myself to 3 minutes and not even limit myself to 10, 20 minutes. I felt like a solo show in the 50 to 60 minute range would be the kind of breadth that I needed to say what I wanted to say, because I had a lot of things to express about my relationship to religion, which, I did in fits and starts with a few poems here and there. but never in a way that I felt was satisfactory to what was, under my skin and teeming, in my veins. So to have that format, gave me a lot of room. It gave me also inspiration to apply for grants that perhaps I never could have applied for. So thank you to Ontario Arts Council and the Canada Council of the Arts for their grants to help me get Jewnique off the ground and to bring it to communities in Calgary and Ottawa and Blue Mountain Resort, where I knew it was important to spread a message of what I was spreading beyond also my own, municipality here in Toronto. So definitely solo show work became something I wanted to do, as well as writing a book of poetry. That's what I did with As Close to the Edge Without Going Over, where I was challenged by my publisher to write a book of science fiction and futuristic poetry. Something I never really did before in a concerted way, but also again in the odd poem here or there, maybe an odd poem here or there about horror or about something fantastical. But then to dedicate, more than 25 poems to that format was a challenge, but a challenge I relished because I felt sometimes in spoken word I wasn't being challenged, later on in my career as a poet, that I felt like I was writing a bit of the same stuff and also teaching the same kind of content when I went into schools to run workshops. So I wanted to give myself something different to do with both the science fiction poetry and the solo show about Judaism, and both have been really fulfilling to do in different ways.
How has that affected the process of writing? Like, is that has that evolved over time?
Definitely. What I really have been doing a lot more of is multiple drafts. When I was writing poetry for the spoken word format, whether that was 3-minute poems or 5-minute poems, because I really never competed in slams myself. I was always the host or organizer. So I wrote still in that, 5-minute range, let's say. I didn't go through many drafts. I felt like I didn't have a lot of other eyes even looking at my poems. But with both the book and the solo shows, where I worked with dramaturges and gave drafts to friends to look over before I brought that solo show to the stage, I went through 8 drafts, 9 drafts of that solo show. I'm going through my 10th draft right now of my new solo show. And same thing with working with my editor for As Close to the Edge. I just learned a lot about how to edit myself effectively. And that affected my writing process because I realized that I didn't need to get it right in the first draft, that as Anne Lamott said, you can write terrible first drafts. And that's often what writer's block is people being afraid of writing a terrible first draft. And that's okay, because we are just sculptors with a lump of clay that we put out with that first draft, and then we sculpt it in the second and third and fourth and subsequent drafts. And that's what makes a sculpture that we can feel really proud of to present to the world. So that's definitely something I learned. And also I learned about pacing, with a longer format, things don't have to be so rushed, that you can kind of ease into telling a story about either yourself or someone else. As I did with Jewnique, I told a lot of different stories about other Jewish folks in Ontario who were trailblazers in their own field. And that was also really enriching for me too, to not feel rushed and to let the pace kind of dictate itself. And also to work in a format too that involved props, involved lighting, sound design, like Jewnique did, where I had recordings of the interviews I did with those Jewish Ontarians, and that was really enriching for me as well. I worked with Charlie Petch, who you know quite well over at Brick Books, and working with him on that lighting and soundstage design made me feel like I was delving more into theater than I was poetry.
Yeah, and now you're cooking up a new show that we're going to get a little sneak peek at.
Cooking up a new show. It's about mental health and my father and an ailment called OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which affects millions of people across the world, and was something that I never was afflicted with myself, but always was seeing it from the outside looking in, and always was mystified by when I was younger, trying to understand what exactly was up with my dad, as something that is hopefully relatable to other folks who were in families that have been, struck by mental, health challenges, and them also trying to navigate what is going on both as a youth and even later on as a 20-something or 30-something year old guy as well. So Yeah, it'll debut sometime in 2023. Don't have a firm date yet. I'm beginning the memorizing process now, and I worked with a fantastic dramaturge, Elise Rich, on it to make it as fine tuned and honed as possible. So I'm really stoked about it.
Nice. Well, can we have a little sneak peek? Would you
Sure,
share
sure.
some with us? Yeah.
Happy to. All right, let me
Awesome.
just get to my Word doc here. So this picks up a little bit in the middle-ish, or kind of beginning middle. And so yeah, there's really nothing to share about before, so I'll just dive right in. It's 1996. I'm 16. There, David, pick up that crumb, my father says at the Shabbos dinner table, soon after we eat the appetizer of challah and butter. He's wearing a button-down collared shirt, his wispy hair peering out from the yarmulke on his head. My mother is fussing over the pot of chicken soup in the kitchen. Hey, where? I ask, peering down at the carpet. There, you can't see it, and he points to an area my eyes surely scanned, but now I spot, between the carpet threads, a breadcrumb the size of my thumbnail. Okay, I'll get it after, I sigh, because, it's not going anywhere. No, he barks back. Get it now, please. Still remembering his manners. Ah, so British. This is the order he needs in his life. And if I resist in recreating that pristine environment, well, the meal really can't continue until I do as I was told. From the kitchen, my mom joins in with a tired, David, just pick it up and get it over with. And it sounds like a sentiment she's said and done many times before. And so I do, like I've done many times before. My father's eyes always imitated forensic specialists waving a light at the crime scene to reveal every speck of blood and fingerprint. Or in my case, when I lived at home, Nutella-based stains and pebble-dotted carpets. The few times I heard him raise his voice when I was a teen was the odd time I stepped into the house wearing shoes. David, are you wearing your shoes indoors? You know that'll make a mess. It all made me feel like I stepped on lava. I quickly scampered back to the shoe mat to undo whatever anxiety I'd levied on my father. I thought his eye for cleanliness was a quirk found in at least one parent in a household. I'm sure everyone's dad asked them to throw out Kleenexes in the toilet and not the garbage to avoid spreading germs, right? And I'm sure you know someone who could spot a smudge on a window so far away, even a trained sniper couldn't crosshairs it exactly, right? My father dusts and Windexes and scrubs and folds neatly and angles the book spines just perfect and knows when a painting is off by a centimeter. And through it all, I do as I'm told. So I dust and Windex and polish and eyeball errant crumbs and wipe down shower walls to prevent grime and convince myself I should never consider the outlandish idea of pressing my grubby fingers against the living room window. I think then, is this the extent of our one-on-one relationship here? Dad, the distributor of J-cloths, me, the wiper of streaky mirrors, this boring dance only periodically punctuated with chats about our shared fondness for British comedies like Fawlty Towers or The Vicar of Dibley. At that age, a gulf between us makes me want to get closer to him, a hunger that doesn't exist between me and my mom. She and I, we get along so smoothly, thanks to our shared love of books and her support for my writing. We both enjoy theater, modern movies. That opens a lot of doors for us, conversationally. We went beyond cleaning tabletop surface talk. Connecting with my father, more challenging. Sometimes he just isn't there with us. In a way, you want anyone you love to see you and not see through you. It's 1998. I'm 18. And in my first year of university, formerly Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University, which sounds like an offshoot of DeVry, I'm still living at home, trying to save money. So I'm with my parents more most freshmen who enjoy the drunken delight of dorm room parties. Instead of pre-drinking at 7 p.m. on this Saturday night, I'm getting ready by huffing down a bowl of cornflakes, which I stupidly think might soak up the Rickard's red pints that would soon be engulfing my bloodstream. After I turn the corner from the kitchen, there my father is, staring out the living room window, eyes transfixed on the fire hydrant outside. I say, "Hey, Dad, you there? Hello?" And I'm met with the softest of whispers. I don't even know if he's speaking English. I don't touch him to get attention or say anything else that might, disrupt his trance. He is as still as the Queen's Guard, save for his lips mumbling words I can't make out. A gut feeling tells me I should let him get back to that fugue state on his own and let him get through it on his own, hoping he would emerge after refreshed, revived, with his family. He is simply somewhere else, and I struggle to understand what is taking my father away from me like this. A growing part of me hopes all this daydreaming is related to music, a deep passion of his. Maybe he is reviewing a symphonic favorite or crafting a new take on an old classic in synagogue like an Adon alum remix. We're both artists after all. I might also gaze thoughtfully when I'm thinking of a new line of poetry or a short story idea. So maybe his mind is circling around something creative and enriching. In other words, I need that spaced out moment to be productive, so I won't have to admit to myself my father is a sick man, because he is. I just don't know exactly how yet.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. That was beautiful. And I love, it's funny because a lot of people think will equate spoken word with poetry only. And to me, it's this umbrella term that encompasses a lot of different iterations, and one of them being storytelling. And I think that this was a great example of spoken word storytelling in action.
And that's what a lot of other shows that I saw from poets who did this kind of format also taught me too, is that, we don't have to put ourselves in a box of saying, this or that, or it's poetry or spoken word or slam poetry, but this is telling a story in a way that feels right for our voice and our way of expression. And that's something I really love about spoken word, the practice as well, because if I didn't have that in my experience, I think writing solo show and theater work would be a lot more challenging and would require me to take, classes and courses, because that experience that I had writing poetry and also being exposed to a lot of fantastic art as an organizer and as a fan really fed me in a way that I think made me a better solo show artist.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it too, the element of it. As I was kind of prepared when you were describing the piece as being about mental health, which is this recurring theme. We've actually just done a series about it because it just kept coming up. And we've got a designated playlist on Brickyard, which I'm going to ask that we have this video to be a part of it. Yeah. Because it's such an important theme. But I love how you've woven together the idea. It's like a coming of age story too. And the idea of how a young man is grappling to relate to his father in the midst of trying to understand something as baffling really as mental illness can be.
Yeah. And that was, a journey that I also couldn't really express again in like 3 minutes or 4 minutes or even 5 minutes. And I felt like, also on the printed page, things might have been lost in ways that, bring it to the stage really invigorates and adds a lot of meat to those bones. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to bring this to an audience. And I think it's an important show for me to do. And I think also an important show for people to experience, because I definitely know I'm not alone in experience what I did, have to go through as a kid and as a young adult. And, whether it is a parent who has OCD or another illness that, fractures a relationship or causes a lot of questions among the family, there's something unsaid kind of about that experience that I haven't really seen in a show before.
Yeah.
From that perspective of someone in a family that has a lot of questions and curiosity also about this kind of state that a parent could be in.
Yeah. for sure. It's interesting. We're coming to the end of our time now, and I'm just thinking about this beautiful kind of full circle that we started. I didn't realize you were 18 when you started Suburban Spoken Word.
I don't even think I could drink yet at the bar that I was hosting the poetry slam at.
I remember,
The Suburban Spoken Word at, yeah.
Yeah, going way out there to steal, although that's not too far from where I grew up myself. But yeah, and now you're, writing this this work that speaks, to that younger self, but also will be, I think, as you described, like a gift to other young people. And so for my last question, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the work that you're doing now as a coach, because you're a writing coach as well. I've had some of people who have studied with me, students who have studied with me, then go and work with you, and heard just rave reviews about how that experience is. So what can you tell me a little bit about, like, what is your approach? Um, how do you help writers get past it, especially somebody who wants to bring their work on the stage, get past that fear of, I was trying to remember, somebody said to me, and I can't remember who it was because it was at a slam in the 90s, the first slam competition that I went to in the 90s. I can't remember who it was, but they told me this. And if anybody ever watches this and you're that person, please contact me and I will credit you properly. But they described slam poets as the bungee jumping adrenaline junkies of the literary world. So
I like
there is an element of slam that is, a bit scary. So how do you work with young artists as a coach and help them, get over their either fear of the page or the stage?
Well, I think it all begins first with the writing. I think before, taking the stage and dealing with things like stage presence, mic control, elocution and articulation and emphasis, really have to hone the writing to feel that what you're putting on stage is the best representative of what you want to express, and that you're telling your honest truth, or maybe even a fantastical story that feels right for what you want to bring to an audience. And that might be different than what you want to bring to the printed page or to your own private diary that never sees the light of day. So it does depend on what you feel you want the world to know about your lived experience, your insight into, maybe a social justice issue that is important to you and has been kind of on your mind for a long time. So really focusing on first with writers on telling your story. And like you said, with storytelling, the building blocks of storytelling are everything from being honest with your emotions and being honest with even your own challenges as a person moving through this world, using vivid details to immerse audiences and readers into your story in a way that preaches the whole show don't tell kind of mantra and lesson that I try to bring to my writing. And also realizing too that you can learn from other artists. So I often showcase other artists on YouTube or in person, not just my own work that might speak to them. So obviously, if I'm working with an artist identifying as female, I'm not going to just perform or showcase my poetry as examples to learn from, but from artists that I admire from Canada, US, and UK, who really do a great job in expressing the story of what it's like to be a woman in modern times. So definitely that's where I started. Then when it comes to stage and being confident on stage, it's not something you can do, in a finger snap through a lesson, but really giving them the confidence that these are some of the tools in the toolbox you can bring to the microphone, whether that's rhythm, volume control, pacing, movement, emphasis on certain words within a sentence, and really bringing that like public speaking kind of protocol that a lot of students learned in high school and still do, but porting that to that spoken word poem that really means a lot to you, and bringing some of that poetic flourishes that we've seen from some of our favorite spoken word poets to that stage. So yeah, it's really enriching to be a writing coach now. I also coach freelance journalists as well as creative writers, which has been actually the bulk of my coaching student roster these days because of how many journalists need a bit of a leg up and need some more professional development in a way that I think creative writers are well serviced throughout, Canada and the US with so many creative writing coaches, but how many, freelance journalism coaches are there really to help writers reach that next level of success. So I love working with both kind of folks who like to be creative, but also like to write nonfiction. And that's, I find, just really fulfilling. I used to go into schools, pre-COVID quite a lot, and I missed it when I was stuck at home quite often during COVID. So that's what gave rise to this idea to bring my coaching to Zoom, so I can reach folks who may be not in my neighborhood. I worked with a student in Lagos, Nigeria, actually, to help him become a better journalist in Nigeria. So that's what I think I really appreciate about things like Zoom. Silver lining of COVID is how now more accessible something, not just like hearing poetry, can be from artists from around the world, but learning from other artists that perhaps you couldn't meet in person.
Yeah, you're right. It's the silver lining. It's the only silver lining. Well, one of the few silver linings.
QR codes too, but no.
Yeah, and the pets were happy. The pets enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you so much, David. It's been
Andrea. I had such a fun time chatting with you and sharing things with you. And yeah, if people want to get a hold of me, you can head to davidsilverberg.ca, BERG, last 4 letters of my name. And yeah, drop me a line if you're interested in what I do.
And he's also on Twitter at Silverberg Dave.
Yep.
So you can find him there. And if you'd like to find out more about the Toronto Poetry Slam, please visit them at torontopoetryslam.ca. So that's it for this installment of the Brickyard Interview Series. Thank you so much for joining us with our chat with Dave Silverberg. And thank you, Dave, for spending this time with us today.
Have a wonderful winter, everyone.
Okay, you too. Oh, and I forgot my plug to tell everybody to like, share, and subscribe. Please like, share, and subscribe. Very important. We want to keep these interviews and this all of our features going. So share. It's a way to support the artists as well as supporting the Brickyard platform and spoken word in Canada. Whoop whoop.
Woo. I like the excitement. Do it, people. Like it, don't be shy.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Thanks, Andrea. It's been fun.
We'll talk to you soon.
For sure. Bye for now.